to the Healing Half. My name is Miki Spear. I am an author, musician, and host of tonight's show, which is hopefully going to be 30 minutes of growth. For those of you who don't know me, my mom passed away when I was 13 from cancer. I spent the better part of 10 years running and avoiding and pretending I was fine. Well, as I'm sure you know, you can't avoid grief forever. Eventually, you're going to have to go through it. So, around 10 years after that happened, my life was starting to crumble, like crumble emotionally across the board. And I realized something had to change. So I went through lots of counseling. I started to lean into my grief. And now that we're all these years later, I wanted to let you know we've got the show to help us address our own grief, our own losses that are also not necessarily grief related, right? We can have losses that are not death losses, and we got to learn, how do we address them? How do we lean into those? As well as, how do we learn how to help others? And tonight's show is all about preparations, which is so relevant. And I cannot tell you how many countless stories I have heard of people who have not prepared for the loss of a spouse. And it's a hard conversation. It's a tough one. But even if it's not necessarily relevant to you specifically, maybe you're divorced, or maybe your spouse already passed away, we've got a phenomenal guest who's going to share her story as well as what helped her and her family. And the reason why, to tie this all together, this is so important, is as you are talking with friends, it's one of the most loving things you could possibly do is to ask them these questions. Unfortunately, I know so many people who were not really prepared for when their spouse passed away. And that could be whether they saw it coming from a mile away, or if it happened suddenly. And the months after the loss, which are hard enough as it is, were extra devastating because they did not have the things in place. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I am so excited to bring on my guest, Pamela. So everybody, give her a big warm welcome.
Thank you, Miki.
It is so great to have you here. We were connected through a mutual friend whose birthday it is today. So extra happy birthday, Jody K. Everybody wish Jody a happy birthday in the comment section. Whether she's watching it live, I hope she's having her birthday dinner. But we are so grateful for friends who connect friends. And that's what this is all about. So Pamela, do you mind just introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your story?
Sure. Pamela Stroman, and my husband and I were together for almost exactly 25 years. And it was just shy of our 25th wedding anniversary. There's our 3 children. And Peter was biking for his 50th birthday. He was training and biking in a marathon race called the Triple Bypass. July 10th, 2018. The Triple Bypass goes through 3 mountain bypasses out in Colorado. So he was up at high elevation and had a heart attack. So we were not expecting that to happen. He was going out to celebrate his 50th birthday and was going for a beautiful bike ride. And that's when we get the call that he had a heart attack and didn't survive. So that was 2.5 years ago. Yeah. Ian, my oldest, was 22. My daughter Sarah was 21, and Thomas was 16 at the time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm already crying. As you guys know, we cry on this show. So Pam, as I see your beautiful family in that photo, gosh, it sucks. I am so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
On his birthday, right around his birthday too. That is so hard. And obviously the reason why you're here tonight is to not only share your story, but also to share your wisdom. And I think that's what so many of us are so curious. So I see so many of you watching. Hello. Just for those who are listening, just a quick yes or no in the comment section. Do you know somebody who has experienced a loss of a spouse and struggled with the details afterwards? It doesn't necessarily mean they were not financially okay, but it was overwhelming for them. because I could list about 5 people off the top of my head that this is like super, super relevant.
Mm.
So I guess that's kind of what I'm going to pass it back to you, Pamela. Do you
Yeah.
mind sharing? Obviously, such tragedy happened so fast.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of
Yes.
take it from there.
And so the title was How to Prepare for the Death of a Spouse. And here I am. This was a sudden loss. So we didn't do the planning through long-term loss, like your mother's loss, right?
Yeah.
But this is going to be interesting for those of us who think it'll never happen to you, right? Never thought it would happen to us. We were going to have our 60th wedding anniversary, and it was just shy of our 25th, right? But I and my husband Peter were very intentional. We had a family mission statement. It was we were going to grow to be contributing adults living with integrity while loving God and others. And that's just a reflection of just our life and how we poured into our children and our community around us. But we were quite intentional. Both of us were very much learners. And so when you and I chatted briefly, I said, well, God did prepare for us for such a time as this, even though we didn't know that this is what was going to be happening. And I would say, other than just our faith and just knowing that He is seeing Jesus face to face right now, that it's the logistics, it's the tangible stuff while we're still in the body here in this earth. And I would say that I feel left equipped with some of the things that we did together beforehand. So maybe that's what we can talk about today for those who might be watching this show who haven't gone through the loss of a spouse and or can share the knowledge with somebody else. Is that what you want us to talk about?
I think that would be perfect. And this is so critical because, like you said, I think everybody assumes it's never going to happen to them, right? It's never going to happen to them, even as we get older and closer to those older years. Oh, it's not going to, it's just something that's so hard to think about. So we don't think about it. And what I have found, and you hit the nail kind of on the head, when you are prepared before a diagnosis, that's a huge weight off of your shoulders because whether it's sudden, then you know you're prepared, of course. But when somebody is diagnosed, like my mom's situation, you are so wrapped up in them being sick that the thinking
Yeah,
about financials, it's like that's why it doesn't happen.
yeah,
It's like, well, didn't you had 2 years to think about this? Why didn't you get it done? It's like, well, we were busy trying to not think about it actually during those 2 years.
yes.
And so I love your story, not that
Mm.
I love what happened to you, but I love that you can talk to people whether it's
Yeah.
expected or after. And then, of course, if you are single, this is really good for you to know for yourself, for your family planning in general, as well as for your friends too.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what some of the tangible things that we did, first of all, why did we do it? Was first, I like to have everything in its place and a place for everything. That's just my nature. But also my husband was a pilot, so we had a little bit of a risk in our marriage in that, what if, right? Didn't think it would ever happen, but what if there was a plane crash? He flew quite often. So some of the things that were helpful that I'm so glad that we had in alignment before he passed were the simple binder that included all of our business financials, associations. So he just made a binder that had dividers and the titles. So life insurance, medical insurance, health insurance, all of the bankers, all of the associations that he did as far as the business side of our family and our marriage. And then he taped in their business cards. So I had all of these late, he would update with like financial statements, monthly statements, and I had all the people's names and contact information all in a binder. So helpful. So guys and gals, go do that right now for each other. And then we had a password book. Again, if all that stuff on the computer and the passwords change so frequently, I was just on him. I was just put it in pencil, and every time you have to change a password, update it. Let's just do that for each other. So grateful that I had his passwords to get into all of those accounts. So grateful. That made it easier. And then just having your healthcare directives laid out with an attorney and have that at your clinic and at your home. Your last will and testament, Peter and I did have that all prepared. And as I would say a younger couple. I was 46 when he died. He had just turned 50. Um, our attorney had said that's kind of unusual that we come in at this age. And now I even have all three of my children. Right now they're 25, 23, and 18, 19. They all have a will. They all have their healthcare directives all laid out. And because we've experienced this, right? So it's never too early. Never too early. Um, Another thing that we did, if any of your audience is parenting a younger family, or like we're in that young adult stage, the summer before he died, I just thought, well, as the kids are kind of launching, I made appointments with all of our people and brought our three young adult, teenage, college age children, and we made appointments and got to know and introduce and kind of invited. I'll tell you who these people are. Like, what do you do? What do you do for us? How do we partner together? So it was our financial planners, our insurance company for auto insurance and all, the toys, so that they could kind of see this is what happens when you get a speeding ticket. This is the cost. Our banker. We partner with a National Christian Foundation. It's a donor advised fund for just our giving, because we want to foster generosity within our family. So we brought all of our children and met all of those people. And here, a year later, we were seeing them face to face again after Peter had passed away. And so glad that we introduced them to our children, so they already had a relationship. They'd already like seen each other. And so that was really helpful. Didn't know,
Wow.
but that's how God prepared for such a time as this. Didn't know.
That's unbelievable. And like you said, that summer you had no clue that was going to be your last time as a family meeting those people. I think that's again, God had his hand, as hard as it is to think about it. That's so amazing. And what I love too about your story is the honesty and the openness. And I think one of the biggest things I get asked is, well, should I burden those people with that? Should I really tell my spouse, or should I tell my kid? Like, a lot of times it's the husband saying, my wife she doesn't care about this stuff.
Right.
It's kind of my role in the family. I just feel like it'd be overwhelming to her, or overwhelming to my kids, that almost scare them. So what would you say to somebody who's hesitant to go down this, granted it's a lot of work, this path?
Yes. It is way more overwhelming to do it after the death. So I would say nothing is too hard. Nothing is too overwhelming. So spare yourself for the challenges that come afterwards, if it were to happen, just to be prepared. And it's not, we don't have to do this big educational, like all these steps. Like, for example, when I gave the example of, this is what it costs you when you get a speeding ticket. This is what happens with the insurance. That everybody needs to know that, so that's not a burden. And we weren't going in like, how do you invest our money with a financial planner? It was more about like, hey, just want you to know, this is how we invest, this is how we share, this is how we save, this is how we spend, because that was just a part of our DNA anyways. So it doesn't have to be too much. I think even with young adults and teenagers, you know how much information is too much, and when they stop asking questions, then okay, they have enough information. So
That's amazing.
lockbox
And
keys. That's another important thing, is to talk to your bank, or at least tell the spouse where the lockbox key, and make sure both of your names are on that. That's another important one. Mm.
the naming is unbelievably important. And I know I won't share details, but I know somebody right now who's dealing with a bank account that, for whatever reason, was just in their husband's name. And now that he's gone, you would think customer service reps would be good at like handling widowers and widows. They're oftentimes not. It's a business, right? So they are going to, are you on the account? Sorry. If you're not, you're not. And it is so, and she's struggling to get access to this money, even though it's legally hers. It hasn't been turned over yet. So I love what you said about making sure your names are on all these things.
Yes.
Check the ownership, check the titles.
Yes.
This is work that's worth doing. Even if you're 25 and you just got married, double check all of
Yes.
that stuff.
Even your
And
electric bill, your utility bills too, Mickey. Your utility bills, the gas, all of those things, make sure both of your names are on there.
wow. And as we're talking, I'm even like, wow, this is so much. Like that's so many things to think about. And so I guess if somebody's saying like this seems like a lot, this seems overwhelming, what advice would you have on how to start in a way that's not like fire hose?
Um, um, well, I think it's to maybe just go make that binder. Like every time you maybe get like a statement in the mail, like okay, let's make our checking account and save our bank uh binder, section. And then, oh, it's time to pay our insurance. Okay, let's put this information into that binder. So it doesn't have to be all done at the same time, but as the mail comes in, you can start creating that binder. Go get a passbook. Just those little passbooks, and just start every time you log into something, like, oh, I can log into Amazon and write down what
Mm.
my password is right now. So it doesn't feel overwhelming. I'm going to log into YouTube. Here's my password. So every time you kind of log in, just spend a month doing that.
That's such great advice. And I actually remember after my mom died, it was right at that age. So this was like 2007. So tech was just starting to get bigger. And we didn't know how to get into all of her accounts because she was receiving emails. It's
Mhm.
one of those things that when someone dies, information, it doesn't just alert everybody. And so you're going to get a lot of mail, especially. You're going
Yeah.
to get phone calls. And if you don't have those passwords, it's a really awkward conversation of, sorry, it took me 3 months to get to you. This is their daughter. She's
Yeah.
dead. It's like, oh
Mhm.
gosh, not good. So I'm just so grateful for all of your wisdom. And I guess how did having that help you after you got the terrible news?
Mm. Well, it made it easier, so that it was already hard to go in and go into his credit card account online and just kind of see what he had, just to kind of cancel that credit card, right? But then finish paying it off, and look at those monthly things that he had subscribed to. So you have to go through and kind of cancel all those things and just kind of get to know, like, how did, because my husband's name is Peter, how did Peter do life? So being able to access that, I mean, that was made it so much easier. Of course, it's still hard to do it, right? But that's a hard. It's a hard thing just to emotionally get through that. But just imagine how hard it would be if now I have to call and I have to send in a death certificate and I have to do all these other things versus just logging on under his under
Mm.
his name and just getting the work done. Way easier.
Wow, that's so great. And I know we've got a lot of people listening who are either widows themselves or they're getting older and they know it's possible. Before we kind of talk about you and your business, because everyone needs to know what Pamela does outside of here and connect with her outside, what words of, in addition to prepping, what words of wisdom do you have for widows or widowers kind of in that those
Yeah.
immediate couple months when the credit cards, the bills, and it just seems
Yeah.
so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Even if you plan well, it still can
Yeah.
be overwhelming.
Well, first of all, you only do what you can tolerate, right? So we are in such deep despair and confusion that it's okay. Some of those logistics and housekeeping, administrative stuff doesn't have to be done right away. So don't put that on yourself. Don't be pressured to do that right away if you're not ready, if you're not prepared. So just give yourself some grace, give yourself a break. And to also know
Mhm.
that here I am 2.5 years later and I can talk about it. 2.5 years ago, this would have been a really hard conversation. So again, it's not just time, but it's what we do with our time. So that 2.5 years later, here I am sharing my experience in hopes that it would help somebody else. So I remember those months after my husband died, other women have gone through this and they survived. And so if they can, I can too. So I think just to maybe support those who might be listening, and it's like, how in the world am I gonna, get through this? You will. Yeah. So on that note, you're saying, referring to my business, is I'm a life coach. Yes, I was not a life coach before Peter passed away. So there is something called post traumatic growth. And I would say that the impact and the learning that I did, and just the help that I got from talking to other widows, other friends, reading lots of books, listening to podcasts, I learned so much and was very much supported. And so I wanted to pour that back into the kingdom here. And so I went through a certification process and became a life coach so that I can help you and anybody else.
I love that term. Everybody, yes, sir. Like, have you heard of that term before? I've never heard post-traumatic growth. You always
Yeah.
hear stress. Um,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Give me like an amen if you guys love that too, because I'm thinking of my own story. I mean, I think of my mom, whose birthday it was on the 24th. She would have been 57. And I just think of, like you said, like as much as it sucks, I can't change that.
Yeah.
But am I going to be stuck? Am I going to be bitter, or am I going to allow myself to grow? And I love that that's your mission statement. And so who's your ideal person? Who typically do you work with?
Well, widows or widowers, or children who have lost a parent, or a parent who's lost a child. So a grief process, but grief also translates into loss of job. I have a couple clients who are just really struggling with the pandemic right now, and so it's to just help coach them through clearing up their thought process so that they can just simply feel better. If you're looking at a job transition, my ideal client is somebody who just is feeling stuck, whether that is grief or just a change at home. I have some divorce, women who are going through divorce, so feeling stuck. So what it is that we take a look at your circumstance and just not be the have the circumstance be the boss of you, kind of. That's just a really easy way to say it, because otherwise we will always be at the whim of the circumstances around us.
Mm.
So like, for example, my husband died. That's my circumstance. I don't need to always be in despair. It was appropriate for me to mourn the way I did, and I, believe me, mourned for a long time, quite intensely. But then I got to a point of like, okay, Lord, what do you have for me out of this? How am I going to grow from this? So then we take and look at your thought life, and clear up what you're thinking, and then what you're thinking is going to make you feel a certain way. So we look at your feelings, and when you have feelings, that's going to give you the motor, the engine to your behavior, your actions, or your inactions. And out of your actions is going to be what you create, your results. So that's just a very generalized model of how I do my life coaching.
I love that. And I love your heart. I love your faith. I love how you, like you said, it could be a loss of a person. It could be a loss of a job. The trauma this country is going through
Mhm.
right now. My goodness, I hope we all have a lot of post-traumatic growth coming our way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Pamela, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing. For all of you guys who are watching, I put her contact in the comment section, so please reach out. I know it is so important to. Again, my whole story was I didn't think I had anything wrong, and that, as she mentioned, circumstances, like everything was just happening to me, and I was just this I was helpless. And it wasn't until I started counseling and like really working through this stuff and realizing, oh my gosh, like this thing that happened 10 years ago was really holding me down. So even if you don't think grief is necessarily part of your problem, who knows how it fits into your equation? And to meet with someone like Pamela who gets it and who has been through it. Oh my gosh, what an absolute blessing. So, Pamela, thank you so much for being on the show tonight, for all of your help. And if she said anything, you guys, that sparked your interest, or you're like, we could really use some help with that, please sign up for a session and just get some brainstorming, get some pens and paper, and go to town, because this is the best conversation you guys will have before someone passes away. And I just firmly believe that. So, Pamela, thank you so much for being on the call today.
You're welcome. Thank you for what you're doing, Miki.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you. Isn't Wow. I am just like, as she was listing off all of those things, I'm thinking to myself, and again, I'm 27. So I'm thinking, I'm 27. Do I really need to like know all of this information? Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. And this is what I love even more about this too, whether you are married or not. If you've got kids, if you don't have kids, something's gonna happen to your stuff after you pass away, and someone is gonna have to go through it. I love my grandpa so much. He was just the kindest, gentlest soul in the world. But I know after he passed away, there were some things that were not worked out, and it caused a lot of stress among the family. And that's just not the legacy you want to leave behind. So whether you're healthy as a horse, it doesn't matter, or if you've gotten a really bad diagnosis, now is the time to be having these conversations. And I am just so grateful for Pamela for being here to share that, because we talk so much about the emotions of grief, but we don't oftentimes talk about the logistics of grief. And I think this is just spot on. So thank you so much, Pamela. Last little thing, you guys know how I mentioned I'm a musician, right? Well, I've got some big news, and I'm so excited to share it with you guys. So I'm on Spotify, and I'm gonna put this link in the comments so you can find it. But I have released songs in the past, but I wanted to share a little bit with you guys. My song "See Me," which is on my website, which is mikispear.com. Make sure you head there, by the way, not only to get the replay of tonight's show with the notes that I'll be typing up from Pamela, but then also some other goodies that I love to throw in each week. But the song "See Me" is not my voice. I'm a songwriter, and at that point in my career, and that would have been like 2017, 2018, I wasn't confident in my ability to sing. In fact, it was a great source of embarrassment for me, if I'm just being like totally transparent. I thought I couldn't do it. And so I hired musicians to produce my last songs. And See Me was the one, of course, that I love to highlight because it's my grief song. And I love it so much. And the woman that I hired to sing did such a good job. If you know her voice, like send me like something in the comments, like she was so good. She really was so good. But this time around, as I prayed about it and I sat on it and I'm doing this show with you guys, I was really convicted. I was like, I want to put out my own voice. I want you guys to hear what I sound like singing. And of course, if you've been on the show before, you've heard me sing from time to time. But this is the first song I'm putting out into the world professionally, in the sense that I created it. I did all the instruments. I wrote the lyrics. I mixed it, I mastered it. You don't have to worry about what that means if you don't know what that means. Long story short, I challenged myself to do a song from start to finish with a content message that I think God was putting on my heart to share. And that's where Light a Candle came in. So in the comments section, I put something called a pre-save link, which means if you click on that, you're going to just pre-save it. So if you have a Spotify account, it's automatically just going to kind of show up on your radar when it releases. And that's happening on February 5th, which I'm so excited about. So if you don't mind, click on that link. But also, if you are on my email list, you will actually get the song a day before everybody else. That's kind of my like little thing I'm excited to share with you. Not only will you get the song before everyone else, but you'll also get the lyrics, a poem, and a little worksheet. And it's all included. I'm just excited to share it with you guys. My gift to you is this song. And then if you don't mind just spreading the word for me, that would just be so, so, so great. I would so appreciate that. I'm just kind of giving it up to God at this point. So thank you so much, Pamela, for being here tonight, for talking logistics. It is, if I could like share more details of people's story, I won't for privacy reasons. You would be amazed at how much stress and trauma and all this stuff that not having this stuff can cause. So thank you, Pamela, for talking about a really, really important topic and for sharing your story and for the life coaching that you do. I think that's phenomenal. And for everybody else joining, thank you for being here. Please share, please like the page, sign up for my email list. I'll send the summary out in the next couple days. And next week, we're going to sing this song, or we're going to talk a little bit more about Light a Candle for Me. So thank you all so much for your well wishes, for being here. I cannot wait to see you next week. And don't forget, February 5th, we've got something coming. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week.